Welcome to the Linux Spotlight. This show is dedicated to showing off the best thing about Linux, our community. This community is made up of developers, distro maintainers, YouTubers, and everyday users. Each one plays a vital role in our community. And the goal is to have a discussion with each individual about their journey into Linux and beyond. So join me now as we turn the spotlight on. Hello, I'm your host, Rocco, and with me today, our special guest is Eric Londo. Eric, how are you?
Doing well, Rocco. How you doing?
I am so excited to get to talk to you today, dude.
Me too.
I have been reading your articles for the last couple months about Linux and open source, and it is so awesome to get to talk to somebody that is so passionate about Linux and open source all together. So I'm really looking forward to this, brother.
Thanks. Me too. Definitely.
All right, so people will undoubtedly know you by your writings, Linux++, and you have this, like I said, this passion for open source and Linux, so people will not know that. But the goal of the show is to show the people behind Linux and their story. So who is Eric Londo personally?
That's a good question. I think I'm still trying to figure that one out. But definitely, first and foremost, I am a father to my son, Vincent. And family is is the most important part of my life. I try to make as much time as possible between work and everything else. So, that's a huge identity for me.
Yep. And that's a tough balance, dude.
It is. It really is. It's tough balance, especially with so many things going on outside of work. And but it's a great balance. It's the best thing there is, really.
Right.
But yeah, I'm a geek. I'm a nerd, whatever you want to call it.
I love it.
I've been using Linux for quite a long time. And yeah.
Well, we're going to get into that whole story that you wrote about your Linux journey. But what do you do for a day job, brother?
I'm an environmental engineer. So I spend about 80% of my job in ArcGIS or CAD, doing contamination analysis, statistical modeling, and stuff like that. So
a real geek.
Yes, it is very geeky.
All right. Do you have hobbies outside of Linux?
Yeah, definitely. I'd say probably my biggest hobby is music. I love playing guitar. I've been playing since I was 13.
Really?
Yeah, haven't really progressed much since then, but it's a great outlet for me, kind of just playing guitar, being alone, listening, writing.
So we're going to see someday Eric Londo on the stage, right?
I very highly doubt that. But yeah, so I love music. I'm into very many different types. I'd say classic rock's kind of my sweet spot.
Yep.
60s and 70s. But I also like everything from electronic music to bluegrass. So
wow,
quite a span.
Well, to be honest with you, my music taste is all over the place. Like, I don't have a specific genre that I mean, there are ones that I like better, but I listen to everything.
Yeah. Yeah, it seems like all the genres are just getting mixed up today anyway.
Yes.
So everything's kind of coming together.
Yep.
Other than that, I think people will be surprised. I do like sports, but only certain sports. Actually, my first I wanted to become a professional hockey player when I was younger.
Really?
Yeah, I was a pretty good player. I was in AAA leagues, traveling around U.S. and Canada, and unfortunately, career got ended too short with some injuries. So, So I still like hockey. Go Red Wings, even though they're horrible right now. But and the other sport I watch is college football. and I grew up a U of M, University of Michigan fan. So that's about it.
Right.
Outside of that, I don't watch much more than that.
Football, you don't get into the NFL, or you just in college?
No, not really. I don't know. It doesn't. College seems more exciting to me. I don't know. I like the rivalries and that kind of thing that goes on, and the younger players, watching them kind of develop. And
Yep.
yeah, it's more appealing to me than the NFL, I guess.
Awesome. Well, look, I was reading that origin story that you posted on your blog, and you talk about your whole family,
I do.
like in the tech industry in some way. Your mom was a system analyst. Your dad worked on supercomputers. Your brother works for Google in machine learning. And I love the whole idea of the whole family being involved in that industry. And I'm sure that you can talk about Linux to them.
Yes, my brother and my dad for sure. I can talk to Linux about them. My mom actually worked on Unix systems, so she retired, I think, really before Linux started taking over on the supercomputers. So she knows Unix really well, but
But Linux is not a foreign word to her.
no, not at all. No. We can talk about it, and we often do talk about it because me and my dad get into random conversations.
Well, what about your other local contacts, other family, friends, people you meet? Are you able to talk about Linux to them?
Uh, Short answer, no, not really. No one really cares. I mean, a couple of times maybe people will be over at my place and they'll see, my computer screen looks different. I'll ask, what's that? And then I'll go into explaining it, and they're just kind of like, oh.
Yeah.
So I used to be like, when I was younger, when I was 15, I used to really be like trying to push it. Like I would wear, GNOME shirts and Ubuntu shirts around,
Yeah.
wherever. And when people would ask me, I'd be super excited to tell them. But nowadays, yeah, I kind of figured it out that no one really, really cares that much.
Well, the reason that I ask this question to people is because that's what I normally get. Like in the area that I live, a lot of the people around here don't even have computers. They don't even want them. So it's like, for me to be able to talk about Linux is like, it's no good. So I always compare stories of who can talk about Linux and who can't. So
yeah, definitely.
well, before we get into Linux, we have to talk about the beginning of your computers. So let's start with your first computer.
So this is kind of a tough one because I really don't remember there being a time that we didn't have a computer. The first one I remember was a beige, box and a tower. Pretty sure it was Dell. Don't quote me on that. And I'm pretty sure it ran Windows 95. But as far as the model, I have no idea.
Right. Now, was that a family computer? Was that yours personally or what?
No, that was the family desktop computer. So I was one of the first people, people that I knew that had access to a laptop computer because my dad had one for work. And so people would come over and they'd be amazed at this, how does it fit on this tiny, thing? So I do remember that. But no, mostly I used the desktop at that age.
All right. So let's go through that origin story. And maybe we should start with your dad. Your dad worked on supercomputers. So tell us about his job.
Sure. Yeah. So my dad has been working at Cray Inc. for going on 40 years now, I think. It might be 37, 38 years. Today he works at Oak Ridge National Labs, which is down by Knoxville, Tennessee. And he is district service manager. So he oversees a bunch of different computers all around the area, in Richmond, Montreal, all over the place. But his home base is in Oak Ridge, and that's where my parents live right now.
All right. So you had a family move and a
Yes.
summer job that you had with your dad.
Yes.
Which changes a lot for you. So tell us about that.
Sure. Yeah. So Unfortunately, due to the kind of rough economic times, Michigan and Detroit got hit pretty hard. Car companies sold off all the craze, and so it looked like my dad was going to get laid off. And luckily, he just got transferred to a different site, which was Oak Ridge. So we were going to move down there, but my parents had a lot of trouble selling the house up here. So they kind of made me a deal because I didn't want to leave my friends and all that. And they basically said, all right, we'll let you, we'll let you go to school, finish out high school with everyone you know. But in the summers, I want to try to sell the house because it's very difficult to sell a house with a teenager in it. I don't know if you know, they call you like 30 minutes before and like, hey, get out of the house. And, obviously my room's a mess. And so,
right.
So in the summer, she would send me down to hang out with my dad, which was awesome because, I didn't get a whole lot of time with my dad during those years because of the fact that he was living down in Knoxville and we were up in Michigan.
Right.
So he, instead of letting me sit around all day and get into trouble, he got me temporary work with him at Oak Ridge. And it was a super cool job. Got to work on some of the largest and fastest supercomputers in the world and putting them together, installing them, doing maintenance on them, changing out failing parts, watching the whole cycle kind of go.
Right.
It's very interesting area, scientific computing. It's pretty amazing. But.
And at one point, your dad has to leave for something, and you get to work on his laptop, or you get to open his laptop.
Yeah. So actually, my first view of Linux was inside the computer rooms. They had little terminals set up so that they could communicate with the computer. And basically, they were obviously just Linux servers. So like a very stripped down desktop and like 14 terminals up on a window. So that was my first introduction to Linux. And I was like, wow, this is really boring.
Yep.
But one night we were there late, troubleshooting some software issue, and my dad could tell I was getting increasingly bored. So he wrote down his password on a little sticky note and said, hey, go play around on the internet on his computer. And I opened it up and was not greeted by Windows.
What were you greeted with?
I was greeted with SUSE Linux 10. I didn't know this at the time, of course. I thought that this was like some kind of custom Windows build for Cray or some kind of because it did resemble Windows in ways.
Right.
But, like looking through the applications, they were all different. There was no Microsoft Office. Like it was definitely interesting. And one of the things I remember most is the icons that were on SUSE. And I later found out this was pre-Plasma, so this was like KDE 3.5 or something.
Right.
And so the icons, if you go back and look at some of the pictures, the icons are just like super colorful, bright, cartoonish almost. And it's
Oxygen, I think it was.
Yes, I wouldn't have known, but it was definitely it kind of blew my mind because my whole life I used Windows at home, and then there were some classes that had Macs in them, like for film and stuff. But other than that, I didn't really know that there was I wasn't interested in operating systems or anything because they were all the same. Like I doubt I even changed my wallpaper on Windows. It was just there. And so then I got introduced to this, and of course my dad came back and I asked him a million questions. What is this? He kind of explained Linux and that it's free desktop, uses open source software. And immediately I was like, I think there's this negative connotation around the word free, where like people expect like if something's free, then it's just worse than alternatives or something. And so I kind of had that preconceived notion that, it's probably not as good as Windows or the professional operating systems. But I still dug into it because I was, being 15, I was extremely curious. Like, this is right around the time that YouTube came out, Wikipedia came out, and I was always on there researching stuff. That's
Right.
one thing I love to do is learn. And whenever I find like something unique or interesting or outside the mainstream, I just like dive into it. I just want to learn as much as I possibly can and see what this is because it's interesting and new.
Well, I think that's a great point that you made, that there is that resistance, and it still exists today, where that if it's free, you think it's lower quality,
Yeah.
and it can't be as good as something you would pay for.
Mhm.
And there are times that that's true, but not all the time. And I think that's something that we're trying to change.
Yep, definitely.
So from that point on, you install Linux right from there, and you've been on Linux ever since, right?
Oh no, far
Okay.
from it. Actually, not too far from it, but far enough from it. Um, so from there, I basically started stealing my dad's laptop, like on weekends and stuff when we were home. Instead of using the desktop upstairs, I would just take his laptop and start playing around with it and start kind of looking at things. I think I hadn't been really using Firefox up to that point. I don't think so. I was getting used to Firefox and I really liked it. Thought that was cool. And just kind of looking through all the applications and trying them out and seeing what they were. And yeah, just playing around with it.
So when is the first time that you actually install Linux?
So the first time I actually installed Linux was in a virtual machine. Are you talking about on hardware? Because
Either one. I mean, your first experience is your first experience. I think a
yeah,
lot of people have a virtual experience with Linux for the first time, but your first experience with it.
sure. So after that summer, I went back to high school and like completely forgot about Linux. Basically, got back in with friends and started doing all other stuff. And then the next summer, I came back down and was reintroduced to it again. Obviously because it's everywhere. Uh,
Yep.
in Oak Ridge, at least, it's everywhere. And I started kind of digging into it, and I found a lot of articles on Ubuntu. And one of the issues I'd had previously, like I was planning to install it on my computer the year before, but after reading through forums and stuff like that, there just seemed to be a lot of issues surrounding certain distributions, and some people in the community weren't extremely friendly to
Yep.
newcomers, and I didn't want to, break my laptop that I needed for school, so I decided against it. But then that next summer, I discovered virtualization. I can't exactly remember. It was probably an article. I read so many articles, and it's probably an article. And I remember seeing Ubuntu, and I thought, "Oh, this looks like a professional." That was the first time I really took Linux seriously.
Right.
Because it looked very professional, like just like something you would expect to see on a computer. And so I dove into it, and it was not as easy as virtualization is today. Believe me, this was, I think, VirtualBox 1 point something,
Oh my.
and so it was before Oracle bought it. It was before Sun Microsystems bought it. It was very early days.
Do you remember what version of Ubuntu it was?
Yes, that I do remember, and I will never forget it because of the wallpaper. That version was 804 Hardy Heron with a very colorful heron in the
Yep.
background on the wallpaper. So, and that was great. I loved it. It was in a virtual machine, and but there were definitely some problems, like with Wi-Fi
Yep.
and certain things like that. But
Dude,
that
we
was
have come a long way in
Oh
Linux.
yeah, that's a lot of people don't understand when they complain about stuff. It's like, no, you have no
You're right.
idea.
You have no idea.
Like now, your Wi-Fi drivers just work out of the box, no problem. Gosh, yeah. So, but yeah, I really liked it, and I think that it was kind of good for me to get in where I did, because if I had gotten in before Ubuntu, I don't know if I would have liked having to do all the disk set up and installing it that way. And if I had gotten in later, I don't think I would have been wanting to learn as much,
Right.
As the years progress, it just gets easier and easier and easier. But back then, you had to learn a lot. And I liked that. I liked, and the Ubuntu community was completely different than what I had experienced the year before. Everyone was so nice. Whenever you searched for, a problem that you were having, the post that would first come up in the search engine usually had the answer as one of the first or second comments instead of, RTFM. So it was just so nice to see like this really caring community kind of around this distribution. And I think that definitely had a part of me wanting to stay with Linux, because I kind of saw this really cool, genuinely nice people, working on this thing.
Yep.
And so
when is it that you install it on real hardware?
I think I went through that virtual machine all the way to 10.04 Lucid Links. And then when GNOME 2 was being dropped and Canonical was picking up Unity, I wasn't really sure about it at first. There were a lot of kind of bad comments about its performance and certain issues that may not have been worked out as well. So I decided to stay on GNOME 2. I didn't want to go to GNOME 3.
Right.
The first iterations of that were just, no comment. But so I stayed on 10.10. And then in 2011, I was in school for audio engineering. And one of the conditions was we had to have a Mac, because a lot of the big proprietary digital audio workstations, some of them only work on Mac. They won't even work on Windows. So part of the tuition was purchasing a MacBook Pro. And so I got this MacBook Pro, and it kind of became my main computer. And I had this old Windows machine sitting in my closet, basically. And I really stopped using it for a few months. And Windows was horribly slow.
Yep.
Like it was impossible to get, like moving my files was a pain just because of how slow Windows was. So eventually the idea, popped into my head. I have this computer. Why don't I just wipe it and put Linux on it, And so that's what I did. And by this time, Unity had been ironed out quite a bit. So this was 11.10. Oneric Ocelot or something.
Yeah.
And that was my first introduction to Unity, which at first I thought I wasn't going to like because of how different it was from GNOME. But I ended up really, really loving a lot. Especially when 12.4 came out. That was such a great release. I remember being so excited to how well Unity worked and just how great the computer was, because when I got the Mac, I really thought this is way better than Windows. I love the look of this. It's so much more polished. It's so much faster. And then when I installed Ubuntu on my Windows computer, I was like, oh no, the look of this is way better. It's way faster. And I can do anything with it, So
yep. Well, all cards on the table. I didn't like Unity when it came out. I was not a Unity guy, and it wasn't until they pretty much killed it that I actually started using it and liking it. So
it's funny how that happens. Yeah.
And I love it today, but yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So there you go.
Definitely.
All right. Now where does the story pick up? Because, your brother was involved in talking to you about Linux at some point as well.
Sure. Yeah. So the Mac basically became a music player. It sat out in our apartment space, and was hooked up to speakers. And so my main computer became that Linux computer, and I used Ubuntu all the way up to 1604, I think. And then my last semester in school, I needed, for my environmental science degree, I needed a Windows computer, again, to run proprietary software.
Right.
So I bought a really cheap Dell Latitude or something on Black Friday. And first thing I did was dual boot 1604 with it because I wasn't going to lose that. And yeah, so I was really excited. I really liked a lot of the coursework I did in environmental science. So a lot of the GIS analysis and stuff. Unfortunately, it wasn't available in Linux. But my brother had, I think, just had his first kid at that point. And so he lived about 5 minutes away from me. And so I would drive down the road, hang out with him and play with my nephew. And then when he went to bed, me and Ryan would basically sit on the couch and chat about all kinds of things. He was a physics PhD, so we usually talked about physics. But at that particular point in time, he had just gotten hired by Google to work on a project called TensorFlow. That's basically these days used for deep learning,
Right.
which is all the hotness in the computer science field.
It is all the hotness right now.
Mm-hmm. And he was like really excited. And so, he was teaching it to a lot of Google's customers. And so he like brought me upstairs and showed me the slideshow and all these cool things. And I hadn't really paid too much attention to the AI machine learning world at that point. And so I was kind of blown away, and I started to kind of connect the dots because the stuff that I was doing in GIS was, the algorithms that they were building with this tool, except it was abstracted away into different tools and stuff,
Right.
that had different names and whatever. So that really interested me. I was like, oh, so I could go deeper into this. And then I think one day when I was really close to graduating, he was just, he asked me what I wanted to do once I graduated. And I had kind of thought about it a little bit, and I knew I really liked research. I was working at the organic chemistry lab at my school. And one of the things he said to me was, well, if you ever want to go into research, you really need to know how to program. And that kind of frightened me because this was not my first rodeo with programming. Back when I was working with my dad in those summers, he tried to teach me Perl.
Right.
And I could not make heads or tail of it. It was so foreign. It probably wasn't the best language to introduce to a beginner in retrospect. But that's kind of what turned me off from computer science in the first place. Is I just thought I would never understand this foreign alien language.
We can blame Perl for that.
Yes. Which is actually funny because now I actually use Perl quite a bit and I actually like it. So it's funny how that works. But instead, my brother started showing me Python, which is a much friendlier language. And it just so happened that ArcGIS has a Python extensibility layer. So not only was I learning how to program, but I was actually able to put it into practice and use it with the stuff I was doing day to day. So it was kind of cool. Instead of going through tutorials and writing all these programs, I was actually going into my ArcGIS program and writing scripts to automate stuff. So yeah, I really, really liked it.
So in your article, I remember you talking about programming on Windows and you not caring for it.
Yeah.
What is it about programming on Windows that you prefer to use Linux over?
Well, this is in my experience. Setting up some of the different programming environments on Windows was a nightmare. And I'll give you an example. There is a scientific computing kind of package distribution called Anaconda, and it gives you all the major scientific computing packages. And trying to get that to work on Windows was like nails on a chalkboard. It was just so horrible. And Linux is just like built for programming. Like
Right.
everything is targeted at Linux. All the tools are there. They're already built into your system. It's just all the tutorials usually have Ubuntu in it, you know, with their instructions on installing or whatever. So I think it's yeah, I just found it. Besides the fact that it was so much faster than Windows.
Right.
Yeah.
What are the programming languages that you're familiar with now? Like fast forward to today, what have you been into and learned?
So I'm like I said, I'm kind of one of those people who dive in to stuff. And I'd say the ones that I know fairly well would be Python, Perl, and C. But also, I really enjoy looking at like up and coming programming languages. So I spend a lot of time. I don't know if I'm wasting my time, but I spend a lot of time kind of playing with these other projects out there because there's just so many people developing so many different languages that are trying to fix different problems.
Yep.
And so things like Crystal, which is a statically compiled language that reads like Ruby, is a really interesting one. There's ones like Elixir and Rust that have caught my attention. So I like diving into all of it, but I'd say mostly throughout the day, 90% of what I do is going to be in Python. And then the other 5 is probably split between Perl or C.
Right. So do you still use Windows or Mac in any way?
Unfortunately, yes. I have to use Windows because ArcGIS and AutoCAD only work on Windows, unfortunately. So I am forced to use Windows. However, it's funny because I really only use it for that. I have so many virtual machines set up. So if I have to like write a script or anything like that, I will go into a virtual machine on my computer and work in Linux that way. But yes, unfortunately, I have to deal with the Windows 10.
All right. So what is your computer setup like? What kind of machines do you have, or how many machines do you have for like main machine, testing machine? I mean, what is your setup like?
Yeah, I've quite a few machines. Right now, I'm talking to you on a System 76 Oryx Pro that is running Pop OS, but right now I'm running Unity, funnily enough. I also have, let's see, I have a ThinkPad Edge E531, which has been my main machine for a while, as far as like carrying it around and going places. And that's running Ubuntu Mate 19.10. And then I have 2 older Dell Latitude laptops that are running right now. One is running Ubuntu 2004 development branch, and the other one's running Ubuntu Cinnamon 2004 development branch.
Nice.
And then I also have a little Intel Nuke, and that I have Solus GNOME running on that right now.
Dude, you have a problem. You have a distro hopping problem.
Well, so on my main machine, I really don't touch it too much. But yeah, I definitely like to play around with stuff, and when new things come out, I like to try them. And
Well, I guess that was my next question. What is it that attracts you to distro hopping, to checking out all of this stuff?
I think honestly, it had to do with I really didn't do any distro hopping for a long, long time. Like I stuck with Ubuntu and only, well, that's not true. I tried Kubuntu out here and there, but I stuck with Ubuntu as my main, operating system, Linux operating system for 10 years. And it wasn't until the announcement that they were dropping Unity that I didn't know what to do. And I tried 1804 and I just had too many problems with GNOME. I didn't understand it. It seemed like a lot of the things that were great about Unity were just gone. And so that's when I started distro hopping. And I mean, I tried everything you can imagine. Everything in the Debian family. I went OpenSUSE. I tried Red Hat, Fedora. I even went to Arch and I was running Antergos for a couple months there.
Yep.
And yeah, so it's I guess I've been exposed to all these different desktop environments now, but it's just, they're all so great in their own way. And I don't understand the wars between them. I mean, I do, because people really like what they like, but
Right.
personally, I like all of them now today.
Dude, like I have always switched between KDE and GNOME, and I've gone back and forth. And I think there are great things about each of them.
Definitely.
There are drawbacks, and that doesn't necessarily translate into drawbacks specifically, but maybe for me personally, because I can't do a certain workflow in this way or that way. But, even, you mentioned Ubuntu Cinnamon, even Cinnamon. Cinnamon was always that go-between, in between
Yeah.
GNOME and KDE,
Yeah.
where
Yeah.
it was like that, like it wasn't so customizable like KDE, but it wasn't like stripped down like GNOME
Yeah.
was. So
Oh yeah.
yeah, I really enjoyed trying them all myself.
Yeah. I mean, I ran after Unity. I went to Kubuntu, and then after that, I tried Cinnamon, and basically ran Cinnamon on everything for probably about a year. So that was really my like. I still love it today. But
what do you think of the new Ubuntu Cinnamon remix?
I really like it. It's got what I want. I actually am in the development chat and stuff, so I know Joshua. Hi, Joshua. And yeah, it's exciting. I think there's some really cool things that can come out from it, and it's going to be interesting.
Well, I think that Joshua hit on a note that a lot of people wanted to see played.
Yes.
You know what I mean? Like Cinnamon is not this huge popular desktop environment, but there is a set of people out there that love running it and maybe don't want to run Linux Mint specifically. So I think it's been lacking, and I think it's a great thing to plug that in. And
Yeah.
I wish him the best, and I hope he gets that going for an official flavor.
Yes, definitely. So the way I kind of look at the GNOME KDE thing is that both were kind of designed almost completely opposite of each other. GNOME was meant to be very easy to use for somebody new, very stripped down. There isn't a whole lot of menus or anything you have to mess around with. Although whether they've really hit on that or not because of extensions and all that, it's hard to say. But KDE went the complete opposite way, to the very technical, want to tweak every little part of my system kind of user. And not everyone is that kind of user.
Right.
I think in our community, there's more of those than not. So I think that's why Plasma gets so much praise and people are louder about it. But it is nice to have a desktop environment that I can just install and it just works. And it's easy, and it's, if I install Plasma, I'm spending at least 20 to 30 minutes setting it up. Getting the way I've become good at it now, but yeah, before it was much longer. But honestly, it doesn't matter what I use. I set them all up to look like Unity. So
I do the same thing, dude.
Yeah.
Every desktop, to be honest with you, that's like the litmus test of me with trying a distro or a desktop environment. If I can set it up
Yeah.
to look like Unity and operate like Unity, like
Yeah, exactly. So, you know, there's the things that GNOME has done with their recent upgrades and stuff, because I really, for a long time, was super anti, and it's only been recently that I've gotten back in with 3.34, and now 3.36 is coming out, and
sounds so promising. 3.36.
I have been using GNOME more than any. It's been the one I've been going to more than any right now, and that's just, I don't know. I think something like clicked in my brain, because I just couldn't understand their design decisions. And then I was actually trying out Intel, the Clear Linux, and that ships with GNOME. And I hadn't used GNOME probably since 3.28 or 3.30. So it had been a while. And I was amazed at how much better it was. And so I decided to give it a real shot. And now I'm really happy I did, because it's actually kind of the kind of desktop I'm looking for, honestly.
Yep. Well, I think that's important when people try things out, is to give it an open mind and a good shot. Because, when I started out on KDE, 3.5, then when 4 came out, it was so stripped down. Like when it went from 3.5 to 4, it was so stripped out that it was almost like you were afraid for KDE that it wasn't going to ever be the same. Like you just would never have the settings that you used to have. And slowly but surely with 5 and all of the releases in between now, they have made it back to, like, again, the most customizable desktop out there. And I think that's great. But I'm still running GNOME right now.
Yeah, isn't that funny? It's really funny. I am more surprised than anyone out there, because when I first tried Ubuntu 18.04, I could not. I didn't get it. It didn't feel like it was the first time it didn't feel like Ubuntu. Every time an LTS release would come out, it was like Christmas for me.
Right.
And it just didn't feel right. And besides the fact that there were so many problems with it crashing and memory usage and being slow and clunky, so I didn't even really want to give it the time to test it out, because there were so many problems happening. It wasn't usable, in my opinion, at that point. But now it's gone in the right direction. Let's just say that.
Yeah, it's definitely gone in the right direction. And like I said, these updates in 3.36,
they're so good.
They're not like earth-shattering, but they're refinements that are really, like
they're
you said, so good.
Yeah,
that I can't wait.
I've been playing around with it on Fedora, and it is really nice. I can't wait for it to drop into the 2004 testing branch.
Well, in case you ever need it, we do have a hotline for distro hoppers. You may need to call it sometime.
I hear you. I try to keep my main system the same. So,
well, I do too.
I just have so many testing laptops. It's not like I'm going to leave them like that, Gotta get some love.
That's the perfect scenario.
I know. Yeah, I think if I had one machine, I probably wouldn't distro hop as much, because it is a pain trying to get it all back to where you had it sometimes. But
agreed. Especially when you got to get work done.
Yes.
So let's talk about your articles, Linux++.
Let's do it.
You started out I guess it was in January?
Yes. Yeah, I think the first one was early January.
So you start this online magazine basically out, and you have news and tech articles in it. But your story, again, was in there. You had a 3-part series. And that was like so captivating, that story. I couldn't wait to read the next edition of it. It was in 3 parts.
I appreciate that.
But what makes you go from like a regular Linux user to saying, hey, I'm going to write about Linux?
Yeah, I've always been really into writing. Ever since I was little, I loved creative writing. Let's put it that way. And even when I was in college, I was there was always this little part in the back of my brain saying, hey, maybe you should go in. All my English teachers were like, this is really good. And, you should think about going writing. But the other part of my brain was like, well, I can't make money doing that. So,
Yep.
But honestly, I had no plans. Like, I literally just decided I wanted to become more involved in the community. I liked writing. So I started writing a couple articles, and then I started looking into stuff that I didn't know and trying out new things and writing about my experiences with those. And then as far as Linux++, the idea came to me because I don't know if everyone does this, but I do this a lot. Like at work, if something's rendering or I have to wait for a while, I'll go on Twitter and I'll like find articles and I'll send them to my email to read later.
Yep.
So my email just becomes cluttered with all these random Linux articles. So I thought, man, it would be really cool if someone just like had one place where I could go and all the major news was there, in one place with all the links that I could go to if I wanted to go. And so it just kind of like, I'm going to try it out, see what happens. And it went way beyond any expectations I ever had. It was incredible, really.
Well, the depth that you go into in Linux++ is amazing. And I think that's the first thing that people see and comment on. Like if I share that with somebody, their first reaction is, oh yeah, here's another Linux article, right? And then when they start reading and they have to scroll and scroll and scroll through all of these articles you're talking about, it's like, wow, this is really good. This is really in depth. I love it.
I try to. So like I said, I'm no stranger to blog. I read a lot of blog, and usually, they want to keep your attention, so they keep it to like a 3 or 5 minute thing, which, doesn't allow for, it's kind of just the details and then it's over. Whereas I'm more of the type of person who likes to kind of make it into a story, So if I'm writing something about, let's say, Manjaro, the first couple paragraphs are going to be some backstory because there's a lot of newer people who are reading this too, and I want them to feel like they understand what's going on. Just saying Manjaro put this out and here's all the technical details doesn't really give too much context. So I like to like build it up and maybe mention something else that Manjaro is working on and how hard they've been working, just something to kind of build it into like a story-like structure.
Yep.
Beginning, middle, and closing type of thing. And it's a lot of fun. I love writing that way more than like just putting out technical.
Yeah. Well,
stuff.
that is very effective, dude. I'm sorry. That is something that when you give people context, they actually enjoy reading it rather than just, blur, their eyes glaze over when they're seeing all the details and everything. They enjoy reading it. So
yeah. And I think that part of it is I kind of have this like encyclopedic mind with just so much useless information out there. So, I'll see some release note about a distribution and I'll be like, oh yeah, well this thing happened just last year. So then I'll throw that in and then I'll start looking more into it and I'll be like, oh yeah, I forgot about this. And I'll throw that piece in. So it's a lot of fun. It definitely is. It's a lot of work, but I love doing it. So it's not really work.
Yep. So Linux++ is basically a magazine full of news topics. But where did you come up with the name Linux++? How does that come about?
God, yeah, that's I'm not very good at creating names, you can't tell. But so many names were already taken. Like anything to do with weekly or Linux was just gone. And I am not the best. Like I said, I didn't think that this would turn into anything. I thought it would probably just be me throwing stuff out to the ether. So I didn't really put too much thought behind it. I like programming. I think that the C++ name play on top of C, for those who don't know, the ++ operator is an increment operator. So it's like every week you get a new one at increments, right? So yeah, it's very, very poorly thought out, but
yeah, that's awesome.
It's stuck, and now I can't do anything about it. So
I'm sure that brings in a challenge as far as certain like social media accounts and stuff where you can't use the plus sign,
Yeah,
where
yeah.
you have to spell it out.
I
But
found that out earlier where I have to spell out plus plus, which yeah, unfortunate, but hey,
hey,
it's
the way it
life.
is.
Yeah.
So in this, you also have a community section where you interview people. So what made you want to put that in there?
Yeah. Well, to be perfectly honest, this particular show, Linux Spotlight, and also Brunch with Brent, are two that I enjoy immensely because I love, like I mentioned, I love the stories, not just the people, but actually listening to their stories behind how they came to Linux. It's fascinating to me. And one of the things about a written interview that I think is a little bit different than what we're doing with face to face is that it gives the interviewee a lot of time to sit back and kind of reflect because it's not on the go. They have as much time as they want to write it. So they can really sit back and think about, where did I come from? And I think it's good to kind of reflect on those things every once in a while. One of the things it does lack, though, is the kind of organic conversation that me and you have, where
Yeah,
we can go off on tangents and stuff like that. So, but it's just a different beast, and it's been awesome. Everyone who's done it, I've loved them. I can't wait to get them every week and read through them. It's great.
agreed. I mean, that's part of the reason why I do the show because I enjoy it so much. I
Yeah,
get to hear all of these stories firsthand, and it's
it's,
it's absolutely awesome. Um, we were talking on Biddle the one day, and we actually went through the list of people for their Linux origin story, and I thought to myself, man, wouldn't it be a great idea if there's one spot where people could go for all of the origin stories? And that's how this show came about. So yes, I love hearing those stories. So keep them coming.
you too.
So what does the future hold for Linux Plus Plus? Where would you like to see it go?
I'm not really sure. I will say that I do have some plans that I can't really speak about yet because
Oh,
I
well,
don't.
that's just between me and you, dude. So you can speak freely.
Okay. Yeah. Well, so yeah, Linux Plus Plus is, I don't know. I think I'm just going to continue doing what I'm doing. And, you know, obviously I'd like to add more things into it. For instance, like a gaming section. I think that might be interested, but unfortunately I know nothing of Linux gaming. So um, I think it would be cool to collaborate with people, maybe, have guest writers, something like that. I think
Right.
that would be a really cool thing to do. Um, yeah, I'm just kind of holding on for dear life as the train rolls by, you know what I mean? So,
Well, there's a lot of effort and work put into all of your articles. It's not just a simple, hey, I'm going to grab some links and show people this. You put a lot of work and effort into it. So I really do appreciate that.
thank you.
All right. So let's get back to Linux for a little while.
Sure.
Um, what's your daily workflow like? Are you a keyboard centric user or do you not even have a workflow and there's just certain software that you need to run Linux?
Oh, no, I'm very, very workflow driven. So I think it was just all the years of Unity being so keyboard driven. That's pretty much, like I said, I set everything up to be like that and to have that kind of workflow. So that's my workflow. It's very keyboard driven. I actually just started using workspaces. I never really liked the workspace idea, but I got a smaller computer now and I'm running Pop! OS on it, and they have really great shortcuts for the workspaces. I've been using them all the time now. It's crazy. So that's a new part of my workflow. But yeah, there's definitely certain software that I need to run Linux. I need some kind of code editor. Usually I use Atom or uh, Visual Studio. I usually have mail clients, all the different communication platforms, Telegram, Discord, all that kind of stuff. I also have been using Gnome's Builder, which is a IDE specifically for GTK development. So I've been getting kind of into UI, playing around with it, and it's pretty cool.
Nice.
So
Well, you recently came out and said that you were going to start helping out the project, right?
yes, I am. I am planning on helping out with release notes, technical documentation. That's already in the works. So yeah, it's just I got so excited when I saw that GNOME was doing well and that I could use it again and that it had made so much improvement because I really love the organization and the people behind it. They're incredible. And so, being able to say that this is the desktop environment that I'm going to use going forward and get to know the people behind it and the developers behind it, I think it's going to be a lot of fun in the next
Right.
few years. So,
Well, you had mentioned earlier about some software that obviously you have a Windows machine or virtual machines around to run that don't run on Linux. And so maybe I won't maybe ask you what software you would like to see come to Linux, but what software would you like to see come to Linux for the people using Linux or the people that may want to come to Linux? Which one do you think would be, we got to have this one?
that's a tough one because my first inclination is to say something like Microsoft Office. Um, but, a lot of that's cloud-based now. So I can, access my Microsoft documents on Linux, no problem, through Office 365. But that, yeah, I mean, it would definitely be huge if the Microsoft Office suite came to Linux. That would be massive. Also, Adobe, I know a lot of creative people use the Adobe suite, so that would also be a huge thing. Yeah, I mean, I really just wish everything would come to Linux,
Yes.
to be honest with you.
More of everything.
Yes, just all of it. Yeah, and like you mentioned, my specific work software, I really wish would be so nice to never have to use Windows ever again.
Yep. Well, there are, from my understanding, because obviously I'm not into that area of expertise, but from talking to other people, there are, open source software for that, but it's not quite up to par.
There is open source software, and it's not quite up to par, but more so, the problem is the file formats. They're not very compatible, and ArcGIS is the standard in the industry. Anyone who's doing GIS work is using ArcGIS. And so if we were to make a map for a client and send them an open source document, they
Yep.
probably would not be very happy.
Yeah,
So,
probably not.
unfortunately, yeah, there are alternatives, and I've played around. QGIS, I think, is the big one. And I've played around with it a little bit. There is definitely some missing functionality, but it's nice to see that people are working on it, because I'm sure in a few years it's going to be really, really good.
Yep. All right. So you talk about Linux all the time. You have a love and passion for Linux. Do you think we're bad at marketing?
That's yes, but here's the problem. I don't really have a solution to it. Like normally, if you would ask me a question and I would say, yes, this is horrible, and here's the way we fix it. With marketing, it's like too fragmented. I think you guys were talking on Biddle last night about how I think Alan Pope maybe brought up that there needs to be one distribution that everyone refers new people to. Of course, he wanted Ubuntu. I wouldn't be against that,
Right.
but I think that is a little bit of an issue. You look at some great marketers, love him or hate him, Steve Jobs sold a lot of stuff, and he was a master marketer. And that was because everyone at Apple was pointed in the same direction. And if they weren't, they were out. And we just don't have that. And we don't have a Bill Gates. We don't have a Steve Jobs. We have Linus, but he's, happier at his computer hacking away on the kernel. So it's just really hard because it's kind of like this democratic, thing. It's like no one wants to take too much control and no one wants to give up too much control. And I think until there's like a specific organization that's dedicated to marketing Linux and there's one operating system that everyone agrees is the one we market, I just don't know where to go from there besides spreading awareness and doing what we're doing.
Well, I think that's a very controversial subject. A lot of people have a lot of strong opinions about that, about fragmentation. It's our strongest point. It's our biggest weakness. And I don't have an answer for it either.
I know.
I just know that, let's put it this way. I don't know. I believe that if we're to go forward and if we're to dominate the desktop like we do in servers,
everywhere,
we just need to come together and pick one and say, this is the face of it. It's not the end all. It's not the only Linux distribution out there, but it's the one that we say, if you're new to Linux, this is the one you try.
Yeah, I agree. And I think one of the biggest issues that I see as far as marketing Linux is, basically Ubuntu was the face of Linux. Like people who didn't know what Linux was knew what Ubuntu was. However, because the community outside of Ubuntu is somewhat, there's negative reactions towards Canonical and product.
Yep.
It's popular, and that's really hurt it because for a long time they did so much for the desktop. It would not be where it is today if they hadn't stepped in and did what they did. And they just got so much hate all the way till today. And the desktop wasn't really making them much money in that aspect. It did bring people to the servers because they had used the desktop. But, it seemed for a while there they were kind of dropping the desktop focus. And now it seems like it might be picked back up with Martin there. So,
yep.
But yeah, I agree. I think that without some sort of unity behind the fragmentation, we're never gonna compete, really.
Well, I think people immediately, when you say a universal distro or one that we would back, people hear, well, we'll get rid of all the other ones, and I don't think that's the case. I don't think that's necessary.
No.
Every one of the distros out there can still exist and thrive and everything else. It's just the one that we promote.
It's just getting people in the door,
right?
Because I think a lot of people don't even realize that they can make their computer their own thing. Yep. Everyone's conformed themselves to Windows or Mac or whatever they use, and there's no way of changing that thing very much. It's very easy. And so people don't even think about, hey, maybe I'll move, my launcher over here or try to add this functionality. And people don't even think about that they even have that option. So I think just getting people in the door is the key. And then if they like it, they like it. If they don't, they don't.
But there's another whole subset of people, and I think a huge subset of people that don't even care to change it.
Yeah, they don't. It's true. It's true.
So, and that's okay too. They can still use Linux, and that's why we kind of need that one universal distro where this is what you would see. This is what you would get. And Alan had made the point that, if you see out in the wild on Ubuntu, somebody running Ubuntu, it's usually stock.
Yes. Yeah. I've noticed that.
Because a lot of people don't change it. So, so have you ever walked into Best Buy and installed Linux on a computer there?
I've thought about it. I haven't done it, but actually that's pretty funny because the last time I went in to buy a new phone, a new Android phone, the young man who was helping me, he was showing me kind of the functionality that he had on his phone, and he opened it up and it looked exactly like Ubuntu Unity. And I was like, what? And I guess it was some kind of skin that you can put on your Android phone, I'm not sure, but it like had the launcher and everything. And I mean, it still
Wow.
had the same functionality as Android. It just looked like, Ubuntu.
Right.
And so we started talking about Linux because, whenever I see something like that in the wild, like, watch out.
Oh yeah,
go after it.
Got to throw that opportunity in
So,
there.
so I asked him, have you ever thought about like doing anything with all these machines here when you're closing up at night? And it's like, I'm pretty close to it, but no, he never said that he did, and I haven't either, unfortunately.
That's okay. I have not either. I've been tempted, but never actually went through with it. So
Yes.
So have you ever been to any Linux conferences?
I have not. I have not been to any really tech conferences at all. I really would like to change that. It's just that I really had no one to go with. And I know that, it's okay to go by yourself and meet people, but I'm really not necessarily that type of personality who's just going to jump in and, hi, my name's Eric Londo. I'm not that type of personality. But now that I'm starting to meet a lot more people and making friends, and I'll probably plan to go because they look like a whole lot of fun, and I'd like to be a part of that.
Yep.
For sure.
Well, I think no matter what kind of personality you are, it's something that you should experience regardless, because the community is so friendly. So when you get there, I went to Self last year, and I'm not a big outgoing guy. Like, I'm not going to walk in the room and say, hey, but the people are so friendly, and it's an amazing thing to get to see people, meet people that you only talk to, like through the computer or Telegram or whatever, Yeah. So that's a good thing. You should definitely do that when we can go to the next conference. I'm not sure if Self is going to
that's what
happen
I was
this year.
I was gonna say. I was looking at Self this year, but then things are a little up in the air.
There.
Yeah.
So obviously, you run Windows for certain applications. You do have some proprietary software for your work. And I usually ask people, are you this open source enthusiast? But I know that if you could, that you would run open source software, because I know that that's part of the passion that you have. But there's a side of people, and it's a big topic of discussion. Like, some people will just say, hey, I'm not ever going to run a piece of proprietary software, but I believe that you use the best tool for the job. Doesn't matter what that is. What are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, I'm definitely a pragmatist. So I kind of use the best tool for the job, but I'm always looking at other tools. So even if I might be using a proprietary piece of software, I don't say this is the end all be all. Like, whenever something pops up that's a new alternative, I'll go check it out, see how it works, see how it runs, But no, I have too much work to get done that I can't be, not using what I need to use. So
yep,
it's unfortunate, but hey, that's life. We have to be able to do things, and there's no harm in using the best thing for whatever you're doing.
but I think that's an important side to show people, is that I'm not running Linux because I have to run Linux and that's the only thing I ever want to. It's because I enjoy running Linux.
Yes.
And I think that goes a long way when you're talking to people, that you actually enjoy doing this rather than that's all I'm going to do,
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think any kind of anytime you're really closed off in some way, whether that's I'm never going to run Linux or open source software, or I'm only going to run Linux and open source software, you just lose so much opportunity because you're already just limiting the amount of stuff you can do.
Right.
And so I would encourage people who are, don't care for open source software or who only use open source software, go look for the tools that are going to work for you. Don't try to meld. The whole point of Linux is making life easier for us, to meld the computer to us, not the other way around. So that's my thoughts on it. But.
All right. So reading your articles, I know that there's a passion for Linux and open source software. Where does that passion come from for you? Why do you love running Linux?
That's a good question. Yeah, it's definitely changed over the years. The reason I got into it was because I thought it was cool. It was different. And then when I really started using it, it was because I actually thought it was better. I liked it better than Windows and Mac. Today, I run it for those same kind of reasons. I think that it's just the better alternative. Obviously, I'm so used to it at this point that it would kind of be hard to really go back to Mac or something. But a lot of it is the community surrounding it. Everyone is so, it's hard to explain. Everyone is so excited about it. And if you're in any of the big Telegram groups, you see this all day, all night. There are people discussing, this
24
thing.
hours a day.
Hey, I have this problem. And then there's 14 people with solutions. And, it's incredible how passionate people are. And that's contagious. I love seeing what other people have to say. I love seeing people put up videos. Some of the videos that were posted way a long time ago helped me in Linux. Helped me to understand people are having the same problems. And it was nice to just go to a video of someone who's way more experienced and they just explain you through the problem. It was, and today that obviously that still happens a lot. So I think that I still like the customization aspect. I still like having control over my computer. I like the privacy and security aspects. But I think that the community is really kind of what has drawn me to like it more than just an operating system, as an ecosystem. So.
Yep. All right. So you had mentioned earlier about what your first experiences with Linux as far as community went. And there was a time where that was really bad, and there are still people out there who maybe not as friendly as they should be. But what do you think that we can do as a community to make that experience better for the people coming in?
Oh, it's simple. It's very simple. Just treat them how you'd want to be treated if you were new. If you didn't know anything about something and you were starting to get interested in it, and obviously you're going to have questions, and treat them how you would want to be treated if it was you asking that question. I never understood I'm going to send you on a journey to find it yourself. I understand it. Like, people want you to work through things to learn. But at the same time, that turns people off because not everyone is like us who wants to tweak around with stuff and turn this knob, turn that knob, change this, config that. Not everyone's like that. Some people just want a working operating system, and they might not even have the means to run Windows 10, or Mac or anything. So I think that it's just important to be very friendly, inviting. If you don't, just give them the answer, or at least a link. Don't laugh at them. Don't tell them to read the manual. Don't send them to the ArchWiki.
There are some people that would, that's their style, to go to the ArchWiki. But most of those questions are not from those people.
No, it's not. Yeah, Yeah, we'll just leave it at that.
All right. Everybody has different talents, dude. Everybody gives to the community, gives to Linux, back to the community and Linux in a different way. You give back by writing about it, by talking to people about it. There are some people that kind of have that idea that if I can't code or I can't program, I can't give back. What would you say to those people who want to give back to Linux?
I'd say that a lot of people don't realize how much actually goes on with these projects. Like it's especially the really big projects like KDE and GNOME. It's not just people sitting and writing code. That's a big part of it, and that's important. But there's literally everything you can think of under the sun behind those projects, from designing to just helping out with documentation, just having knowledge and answering questions on the forums. Um, yeah, I was kind of the same way. I thought, I'm never going to really be able to contribute, like, until I started writing and people started responding. And I realized that maybe this is, more than I thought it would ever be. But the reason I decided to start contributing more openly is because of you guys harping on it. I think that this continuously needs to be brought up over and over again, is that a lot of these big projects that you see, or maybe not even big projects, but don't have a huge team behind them. There's just a handful of people trying to get the development done, writing documentation, release notes, working on the website. I mean, there's just getting the word out, marketing.
Yep.
That there's so many things you can do that and most of the teams are not going to turn you away. Like, if you say, "Hey, I want to help out," most of the time they're going to say, "Sure, we need help."
Yep.
So yeah, I really encourage, if you're interested in getting more involved, reach out, find a project you love, and reach out to the people who run it, and see what you can do. You never know unless you start. So
Right. Got to start somewhere. Got to take that first step.
that's right.
Do you do any programming on Linux as far as like coding, developing applications?
Well, yeah, I had started dipping my feet into UI development. I think I mentioned that. But as far as for work, I do write a lot of uh, Python code in Linux, a lot of different statistical modelings and building dashboards and certain things like that. So I do spend a pretty significant amount of time programming, but it's not necessarily software development the way I see it. It's more like scientific computing, I guess. So yeah.
Do you have a favorite that you worked on?
Favorite projects?
Yeah.
I'd probably say so. In my group at my work, I'm the tech guy. Like, no one else knows anything, and so I built this huge repository of different scripts you can run with ArcGIS to make things faster, automate stuff. And of course, nobody knew what the heck it was, So I actually had a lunch and learn where I, was with my group, and I showed them how to use Python, how to install it on their system, and how to use these scripts to make their lives easier. Because doing all that stuff by hand over and over again is just annoying. And if you have a tool that allows you to at least take some of that out, it's been great, because people have really been thanking me and been super appreciative of it. So I think that's probably my favorite thing I've worked on, because it's directly affected other people in a positive way.
Right. Well, I think that's awesome when you can do that. When you see it actually happening,
Yeah.
when you see how much it is helping them in their personal work or whatever it may be, you that's rewarding in it of itself.
And I think that's part of the reason I wanted to get into software engineering for Linux is, I mean, the reason that I went into environmental science was I was looking for a field where I could do some kind of good, you know, I could feel fulfilled with my job. And I think that working on something like Linux or building apps for Linux is just as important as that kind of stuff, because you have no idea how much where Linux is, how far it's penetrated our world. If Linux was no longer there, our world would shut down.
Yep.
So much depends on it, and I think that the people who work on it are just so amazing that they give up their time to do that, and they're really like, I don't know. It's something that I thought about lately.
Well, I think that's why it's so important to say thank you to those people whenever you get the chance.
It certainly is, and believe me, they're very appreciative if you take an interest in their project and you say thank you. Just a simple thank you. Thank you
Yep.
for building this so that I can use it. They light up, because most of the time they're looking at bug reports and people complaining about this not working and that not working. And it's not super fun all the time,
No, it's not. It's not the
So
most exciting thing in the world, but
just that little
that goes a
thank
long
you.
way.
Yeah, just that little thank you means so much to them, I think.
So, what do you think of when I say the term "Year of the Linux Desktop"?
Still.
Yeah, still.
It's been a long time coming. I don't know. I think of, I like how, I can't remember who put it this way, but one of the previous person that you interviewed put it on your show and said that it's when the desktop clicked for you was the year of the Linux desktop.
Yep.
I'm going to go ahead and steal that because I can't come up with anything better.
That to me is the perfect answer. That was actually Cubicle Nate that said
Yeah.
that, and
Okay.
that was like the perfect description of it. And I steal it too, so don't feel bad.
Yeah. I otherwise it's just, I've heard it for the past 15 years. And
Right. So, if there was one thing you could change about Linux, what would it be?
I don't know. That's a tough question, because a lot of the things in Linux, I feel like if I were to impose a change on them for a reason, it would negatively impact it another way. Like if I were to say, I want everyone to become unified, well, then that gives up all the choice we've had and we've been blessed with, so I guess I would change it so everyone was very nice. I don't know.
Have more people be nice. Yeah.
Yes. Or, I mean, I think maybe more companies being open to being supportive of Linux might be a really huge thing. But yeah, I really like what it is. I really like the idea of it. I like how it works. I like using it. I like talking about it. I like learning about it. I like where we're at with it right now.
Well, I think that having companies be more open to it would be a great thing. But I think that anytime that you want to have change, you need to have change in yourself first before you
Mm-hmm.
change other things around you. And I think that to me is the most important thing for us to change how we view other people in the community, how we view companies,
Mm-hmm.
um, understanding that, companies need to make money, that kind of thing. Like,
Yes.
be more understanding to everybody around you. And I think that will go a long way in down the road having more companies not be turned off by the community. There have been companies that have been turned off
Yes.
by the reactions in the Linux community. I think
Mm-hmm.
that's something we need to change.
Yeah, and it's like, really, there shouldn't be very much you're complaining about it anymore. Like Linux is so easy to get up and running on a machine today. Like they have done so much to make it accessible to any level of user. So honestly, I'm just happy that it's available and that it's better. and that I found it.
Yep. Agreed. All right. Is there anything else you want to share with people?
Yeah, actually, I want to say thank you so much for the support. Like, it honestly, like I mentioned, I had no intentions of like this becoming anything. It was just kind of exercise and writing and compiling my thoughts. And the community response has been just absolutely amazing. The number of people I've got emailing me, telling me that they really like it, and people giving suggestions to make it better. It's been extremely humbling, and just thank you. Well, I'll just say thank you. So,
Very nice. Well, thank you for joining me, Eric. I really appreciate it.
yeah, it was very nice talking to you, Rocco.
I do want to say thank you for all of the effort that you put into your articles. They are a treat to read, and it's one of those things that you look forward to coming out.
I
So I
appreciate
really
that very
appreciate
much.
that.
Thank you.
All right, that's going to wrap it up. Thank you all for joining us this week as we spotlight the best thing about Linux, our community. Until next time, long live Linux.